And before we get right into the new stuff, let us go ahead and do a quick recap of what we've done so far. So Socrates was talking about how he has different sorts of accusers. His old accusers, the ones that have been accusing him his entire life, basically have had very little of substance to say about him. They've said that he speaks of things in the sky and below the earth and makes the weaker argument the stronger. Both of these just seem to be generic arguments made against philosophers in general, whereas these are things that he claims he doesn't speak about and doesn't do, so they're entirely baseless. They claim that he claims to be a wise man, to which he responds he basically only claims to be as wise insofar as he knows that he knows nothing. Whereas when he went around and spoke to all of the politicians and sophists and poets, they claimed to know things but did not know anything. And when he went to the experts and craftsmen, they knew some things but claimed to know more than they actually knew. So basically, because of this, Socrates is wise only insofar as he is not ignorant to his own ignorance, whereas many other people are. So that's his claim there. Then there's another claim against him that he corrupts the youth, and that he makes them believe in spirits rather than the city gods. As far as corrupting the youth goes, Socrates' argument, we actually went over this one for quite a while. If anyone wants to go back and watch the old video, I'm not going to entirely go through what me and Max spoke about, but the corrupts the young came down to, his argument was basically he either is not corrupting the young or is not doing so willingly, because no man would willingly seek to go about harming himself. And if he were actively, intentionally corrupting the young, then when the young are corrupted, they might turn about and harm him, which means if he were intentionally corrupting the young, he would be going about trying to harm himself, which he got Meletus to admit no man would go about trying to harm himself. There's a bunch more that we spoke about that we kind of like tried to follow that string down. We kind of all agreed that on its face, it's a fairly weak argument for a number of reasons, but we went on to discuss it, and then they claimed that he was an atheist and believes in spirits rather than the gods of the cities, but he basically pointed out that spirits are either gods themselves or the children of gods and other beings like nymphs and humans, and it does not make sense to believe in mules if you don't believe in horses and asses. It does not make sense to believe in the activities of a horseman if you don't believe in horses. Therefore, it doesn't make sense to believe in spirits if you don't believe in what the spirits came from. So essentially, he points out that the argument is basically calling him an atheist because he's not an atheist. And then he started to talk a bit about why people might ask him why he would do the things he's doing when they could lead to his death, because he's on trial now. And he pointed out that good men do not do what keeps them alive. Good men do what is good. And he basically uses the war in Troy as his example for that, where, you know, and back in ancient Greece, this was like the big myth, that one of the big myths that they had, that they celebrated their ancestors, and so basically, if you were to criticize Socrates for as doing what he did, which he thought to be the correct thing, at the expense of his own life, then you would be saying that the men at Troy, and Achilles in particular, were inferior men, because rather than worrying about preserving their own lives, they went to war with Troy and many of them died. So that's about where we are now. So let's go ahead and open up the text. In the description of the YouTube video, there's going to be a link to the text, as well as I posted it in the Discord. So anyone that wants to have it in front of them and follow along, or if you're in the Discord, you can also watch my stream where I will be alternating between the text and the notes. And we are starting here at 28. Alright. I do not think, gentlemen of the jury, that it requires a prolonged defense to prove that I am not guilty of the charges in Meletus's deposition, but this is sufficient. On the other hand, you may know that what I said earlier is true, that I am very unpopular with many people. This will be my undoing if I'm undone, not Meletus or Anytus, but the slanderers and envy of many people. This has destroyed me and many other good This has destroyed me and many other good men and will, I think, continue to do so. There is no danger that it will stop me. Some might say, are you not ashamed, Socrates, to have followed the kind of occupation that has led to your being now in danger of death? However, I should be right to reply to him. You are wrong, sir, if you think that a man who is any good at all should take into account risk of life or death. He should look into this only in his actions, whether what he does is right or wrong, whether he is acting like a good or bad man. According to your view, all the heroes who died at Troy were inferior people, especially the son of Thetis, who's Achilles, who were so contemptuous of danger and danger compared with disgrace. When he was eager to kill Hector, his goddess mother warned him, as I believe in some such words as these, "My child, if you avenge the death of your comrade, Patroclus, and you kill Hector, you will die yourself, for your death is to follow immediately after Hector's." Hearing this, he despised death and danger, and was much more afraid to live a coward who did not avenge his friends. "Let me die at once," he said, "when once I have given the wrongdoer his deserts, rather than remain here a laughingstock by the curved ships, a burden upon the earth." Do you think he gave thought to death and danger? This is the truth of the matter, gentlemen of the jury. Whether a man has taken the position that he believes to be best, or has been placed by his commander where he must face, I think, to remain and face danger, without a thought for death or anything else, rather than disgrace. It would have been a dreadful way to behave, gentlemen of the jury, if at Potidaea, Amphipolis and Delium, I had, at the risk of death like anyone else, remained at my post where those of you elected to command had ordered me, and then, when the god ordered me, as I thought and believed, to live the life of the philosopher, to examine myself and others, I had abandoned my post for fear of death or anything else. That would have been a dreadful thing, and then I might truly have justly been brought here for not believing that there are gods, disobeying the oracle, fearing death, and thinking I was wise when I was not. To fear death, gentlemen, is no other than to think oneself wise when one is not, to think one knows what one does not know. No one knows whether death may not be the greatest of all blessings for man, yet men fear it as if they knew that it is the greatest of evils. And surely it is the most blameworthy ignorance to believe that one knows what one does not know. It is perhaps on this point and in this respect, gentlemen, that I differ from the majority of men, and if I were to claim that I am wiser than anyone in anything, it would be in this that I have no adequate knowledge of things in the underworld, so I do not think I have. I do know, however, that it is wicked and shameful to do wrong, to disobey one's superior, be he god or man. I shall never fear or avoid things of which I do not know, whether they may not be good or good rather than things that I know to be bad. Even if you acquitted me now, and did not believe Anytus, who said to you that either I should not have been brought here in the first place, or that now I am here, you cannot avoid executing me. For if I should be acquitted, your sons would practice the teachings of Socrates, and all be thoroughly corrupted. If you said to me in this regard, "Socrates, we do not believe Anytus now. We acquit you, but only on the condition that you spend no more time on this investigation, and do not practice philosophy, and if you are caught doing so, you will die." If, as I say, you were to acquit me on those terms, I would say to you, gentlemen of the jury, I am grateful and I am your friend, but I will obey the god rather than you, and as long as I draw breath and able, I shall not cease to practice philosophy, to exhort you, and in my usual point, in my usual way, to point out anyone of you whom I happen to meet. Good sir, you are an Athenian, a citizen of the greatest city, with the greatest reputation for both wisdom and power. Are you not ashamed of your eagerness to possess as much wealth, reputation, and honors as possible, while you do not care for nor give thought to wisdom or truth, or the best possible state of your soul? Then, if one of you disputes this and says he does care, I shall not let him go at once or leave him, but I shall question him, examine him, and test him. And if I do not think he has attained the goodness that he says he has, I shall reproach him, because he attaches little importance to the most important things, and greater importance to the inferior things. I shall treat in this way anyone I happen to meet, young and old, citizen and stranger, and more so the citizens, because you are more kindred to me. Be sure that this is what the god ordered me to do, and I think there is no greater blessing for the city than my service to the god. For I go around doing nothing but persuading both young and old among you not to care for your body or your wealth in preference to, or as strongly as for the best possible state of your soul. As I say to you, wealth does not bring about excellence, but excellence makes wealth, and everything else good for men, both individually and collectively. Now, if by saying this I corrupt the young, this advice must be harmful, but if anyone says that I give different advice, he is talking nonsense. On this point, I would say to you, gentlemen of the jury, whether you believe Anytus or not, whether you acquit me or not, do so on the understanding that this is my course of action, even if I am to face death many times. Do not create a disturbance, gentlemen, but abide by my request not to cry out at what I say, but to listen. For I think it will be to your advantage to listen, and I am about to say other things at which you will perhaps cry out. By no means do this. Be sure that if you kill the sort of man I say I am, you will not harm me more than you harm yourselves. Neither Miletus nor Anytus can harm me in any way. He could not harm me, for I do not think it is permitted that a better man be harmed by a worse. Certainly he might kill me, or perhaps banish or disenfranchise me, which he and maybe others think to be great harm, but I do not think so. I think he is doing himself a much greater harm doing what he is doing now, attempting to have a man executed unjustly. Indeed, gentlemen of the jury, I am far from making it defense now on my behalf, as it might be thought, but on yours, to prevent you from wrongdoing by mistreating the god's gift to you by condemning me. For if you kill me, you will not easily find another like me. I was attached to this city by the god, though it seems a ridiculous thing to say, as upon a great and noble horse, which was somehow somewhat sluggish because of its size, and needed to be stirred up by a kind of gadfly. It is to fulfill some such function that I believe the god has placed me in the city. I never cease to rouse each and every one of you, to persuade and reproach you all day long, and everywhere I find myself in your company. Another such man will not easily come to be among you, gentlemen, and if you believe me, you will spare me. You might easily be annoyed with me as people are when they are aroused from a doze, and strike out at me. If convinced by Anytus, you could easily kill me, and then you could sleep on for the rest of your days, unless the god, in his care for you, sent you someone else. That I am the kind of person to be a gift of the god to the city, you might realize from the fact that it does not seem like human nature for me to have neglected all my own affairs, and to have tolerated this neglect for now for so many years, while I have always concerned with you, approaching each of you like a father or elder brother to persuade you to care for virtue. Now, if I profited from this by charging a fee for my advice, there would be some sense to it. But you can see for yourselves that, for all their shameless accusations, my accusers have not been able in their impudence to bring forward a witness to say that I have ever received a fee or ever asked for one. I, on the other hand, have a convincing witness that I speak the truth, my poverty. It may seem strange that while I go around and give this advice privately and interfere in private affairs, I do not venture to go to the assembly and there advise the city. You have heard me give reason for this in many places. I have a divine or spiritual sign which Miletus has ridiculed in his disposition. This began when I was a child. It is a voice, and whenever it speaks it turns me away from something I am about to do, but it never encourages me to do anything. This is what has prevented me from taking part in public affairs, and I think it was quite right to prevent me. Be sure, gentlemen of the jury, that if I had long ago attempted to take part in politics, I should have died long ago, and benefited neither you nor myself. Do not be angry with me for speaking the truth. No man will survive who genuinely opposes you or any other crowd and prevents the occurrence of many unjust and illegal happenings in the city. A man who really fights for justice must lead a private, not a public life, if he is to survive even for a short time. I shall give you great proofs of this, not words, but what you esteem, deeds. Listen to what happened to me, that you may know that I will not yield any man contrary to what is right for fear of death, even if I should die at once for not yielding. The things I shall tell you are commonplace and smack of the law courts, but they are true. I have never held any office in the city, but I have served as a member of the council, and our tribe of Antiochus was presiding at the time when you wanted to try as a body the 10 generals who failed to pick up the survivors of the naval battle. Let's go ahead and check that footnote real quick. This was the Battle of Name, south of Lesbos, in 406 BC, the last Athenian victory of the war. A violent storm prevented Athenians from rescuing the survivors. For this, they were tried in Athens and sentenced to death by the assembly. This was illegal, as you all recognize later. I was the only member of the presiding committee to oppose your doing something contrary to the laws, and I voted against it. The orders were ready to prosecute me and take me away, and your shouts were egging them on. But I thought I should run any risk on the side of the law and justice rather than join you, for fear of prison or death, when you were engaged in an unjust course. This happened when the city was still a democracy. When the oligarchy was established, the 30 summoned me to the hall, along with 4 others, and ordered us to bring Leon from Salamis, that he might be executed. Let's go ahead and check the footnote on the 30. This was the harsh oligarchy that was set up after the final defeat of Athens in 404 BC, and that ruled Athens for some 9 months, in 404 to 403, before democracy was restored. They gave many such orders to many people in order to implicate as many as possible in their guilt. Then I showed again, not in words but in action, that if it were not rather vulgar to say so, death is something I couldn't care less about, but that my whole concern is not to do anything unjust or impious. The government, powerful as it was, did not frighten me into any wrongdoing. When we left the hall, the other 4 went to Salamis and brought in Leon, but I went home. I might have been put to death for this had not the government fallen shortly afterwards. There are many who will witness to these events. Do you think I would have survived all these years if I were engaged in public affairs and, acting as a good man must, came to the help of justice and considered this the most important thing? Far from it, gentlemen of the jury, nor would any other man. Throughout my life in any public activity I may have engaged in, I am the same man as I am in my private life. I've never come to an agreement with anyone to act unjustly, neither with anyone else nor with anyone of those who slanderously say they are my pupils. I have never been anyone's teacher. If anyone, young or old, desires to listen to me when I am talking and dealing with my own concerns, I have never begrudged this to anyone. But I do not converse when I receive a fee, and not when I do not. I am equally ready to question the rich and the poor if anyone is willing to answer my questions and listen to what I say. And I cannot justly be held responsible for the good or bad conduct of these people, as I never promised to teach them anything and have not done so. If anyone that says that he has learned anything from me, or that he heard anything privately that the others did not hear, be assured that he is not telling the truth. Why, then, do some people enjoy spending considerable time in my company? You have heard why, gentlemen of the jury. I have told you the whole truth. They enjoy hearing those being questioned who think they are wise but are not. And this is not unpleasant. To do this has, as I say, been enjoined upon me by the god, by means of oracle and dreams, and in every other way that a divine manifestation has ever ordered a man to do anything. This is true, gentlemen, and can be easily established. If I corrupt some young men and have corrupted others, then surely some of them who have grown older and realize that I gave them bad advice when they were young should now themselves come up here and accuse me and avenge themselves. If they were unwilling to do so themselves, then some of their kindred, their fathers or brothers or other relations should recall it now if their family had been harmed by me. I see many of these present here. First Crito, my contemporary and fellow demesmen, father of Critobulus here. Next Licinius of Sphetus, the father of Ascanes here. Also Antiphon, the Cephason, father of Epigenes, and others whose brothers spent their time in this way. Nicostras, the son of Theozotides, brother of Theodotus, and Theodotus has died, so he could not influence him. Parolius here, son of Democritus, whose brother was Theagus. There is Adamine, blah blah blah, just going over names. He does mention Plato here, son of Ariston, brother of Plato. Just kind of amusing, Plato being obviously the guy that wrote this. I believe he's mentioned later on as well. I could mention many others, someone of whom surely Meletus should have brought to you in witness in his own speech. If he forgot to do so, then let him do it now. I will yield time if he has any of the kind to say. You will find quite the contrary, gentlemen. These men are all ready to come to the help of the corrupter, the man who has harmed their kindred, as Meletus and Anytus say. Now, those who were corrupted might well have reason to help me, but the uncorrupted, their kindred, who are older men, have no reason to help me except the right and proper one, that they know Meletus is lying and that I am telling the truth. Very well, gentlemen of the jury. This, and maybe other similar things, is what I have to say in my defense. Perhaps one of you might be angry as he recalls that when he himself stood trial on a less dangerous charge, he begged and pleaded and implored the jury with many tears that he brought his children and many of his friends and family into the court to arouse as much pity as he could, but that I do none of these things, even though I may seem to be running the ultimate risk. Thinking of this, he might feel resentful toward me, and, angry about this, cast his vote in anger. If there is any such one among you, I do not deem there is, but if there is, I think it would be right to say in reply, my good sir, I too have a household, and in Homer's phrase, I am not born from oak or rock, but from men, so that I have a family, indeed 3 sons, gentlemen of the jury, of whom one is an adolescent, while 2 are the children. Nevertheless, I will not beg you to acquit me by bringing them here. Why do I do none of these things? Not through arrogance, gentlemen, nor through lack of respect for you. Whether I am brave in the face of death is another matter, but with regard to my reputation and yours, and that of the whole city, it does not seem right to me to do these things, especially at my age and with my reputation. For it is generally believed, whether it be true or false, that in certain respects Socrates is superior to the majority of men. Now, if those of you who are considered superior, be it in wisdom or courage or whatever other virtue makes them so, are seen behaving like that, it would be a disgrace. Yet I have often seen them do this sort of thing when standing trial, men who are thought to be somebody, doing amazing things as if they are thought it a terrible thing to die, and as if they were to be immortal if you did not execute them. I think these men bring shame upon the city, so that a stranger, too, would assume that those who are outstanding in virtue among the Athenians, whom they themselves select from themselves to fill offices of state and receive other honors, are in no way better than the women. Very, very old text. You should not act like that, gentlemen of the jury, those of you who have any reputation at all, and if we do, you should not allow it. You should make it very clear that you will more readily convict a man who performs these pitiful dramatics in court and so makes the city a laughingstock than a man who keeps quiet. Quite apart from the question of reputation, gentlemen, I do not think it right to supplicate the jury to be acquitted because of this, but to teach and persuade them. It is not the purpose of a juryman's office to give justice as a favor to whomever it seems good to him, but to judge according to law, and this he has sworn to do. We should not accustom you to perjure yourselves, nor should you make a habit of it. This is irrelevant to the conduct for either of us. Do not deem it right for me, gentlemen of the jury, that I should act towards you in a way that I do not consider to be good or just or pious, especially, by Zeus, as I am being prosecuted by Meletus here for impiety. Clearly, if I have convinced you by my supplications to do violence to your oath of office, I would be teaching you not to believe that there are gods, and my defense would convict me of not believing in them. This is far from being the case, gentlemen, for I do believe in them, as none of my accusers do. I leave it to you and the God to judge me in the way they think will be best for me. Alright, we're gonna give me just a moment. If any of y'all have anything you want to ask or add here, feel free. Sorry about that, allergies. The jury now gives its verdict of guilty, and Miletus asks for the penalty of death. There are many other reasons for my not being angry with you for convicting me, gentlemen.
Cutting in and out.
What?
You were cutting in and out, just like now.
The jury now gives its verdict of guilty, and Miletus asks for the penalty of death. There are many other reasons for my not being angry with you for convicting me, gentlemen of the jury, and what happened was not unexpected. I am much more surprised at the number of votes cast on each side, for I did not think the decision would be by so few votes, but by a great many. As it is, a switch of only 30 votes would have acquitted me. I think myself that I have been cleared on Miletus' charges, and not only this, but it is clear to all that if Anytus and Lycon had not joined him in accusing me, he would have been fined 1,000 drachmas for not receiving a fifth of the votes. He assesses the penalty of death. So be it. What counter-assessment should I propose to you, gentlemen of the jury? Clearly it should be a penalty I deserve, and what do I deserve to suffer or pay because I have deliberately not led a quiet life, but have neglected what occupies most people? Wealth, household affairs, the position of general or public orator, or the other offices, the political clubs, and the factions that exist in the city? I thought myself too honest to survive if I occupied myself with those things. I did not follow that path that would have made me of no use to either to you or to myself, but I went to each of you privately and conferred upon him what I say is the greatest benefit, by trying to persuade him not to care for any of his belongings before caring that he himself should be as good and as wise as possible, not to care for the city's possessions more than for the city itself, and to care for other things in the same way. What do I deserve for being such a man? Some good, gentlemen of the jury, if I must truly make an assessment according to my deserts, and something suitable. What is suitable for a poor benefactor who needs leisure to exhort you? Nothing is more suitable, gentlemen, than for such a man to be fed in the Prytaneum, much more suitable for him than for any one of you who has won a victory in Olympia with a pair or a team of horses. And we're going to go ahead and jump down to the footnote. Was the magistrates' hall or town hall of Athens. Free meals of the Prytaneum was the reward given to the victorious Olympic athletes. So basically, he's saying, what should my penalty be for this guilty verdict? The equivalent of the accolades given to celebrities. The Olympian victor makes you think yourself happy. I make you happy. Besides, he does not need food, but I do. So if I must make a just assessment of what I deserve, I assess it at this: free meals in the Prytaneum. When I say this, you may think, as when I spoke of appeals to pity and entreaty, that I speak arrogantly. But that is not the case, gentlemen of the jury. Rather, it is like this. I am convinced that I never willingly wronged anyone, but I am not convincing you of this, for we have talked together but a short time. If it were the law with us, as it is elsewhere, that a trial for life should not last one but many days, you would be convinced. But now it is not easy to dispel the great slanders in a short time. Since I am convinced that I wronged no one, I am not likely to wrong myself to say that I deserve some evil and to make some such assessment against myself. What should I fear? That I should suffer the penalty Miletus has assessed against me, of which I say I do not know whether it is good or bad? Am I then to choose in preference to this something that I know will very well to be an evil, and assess the penalty under that? Imprisonment? Why should I live in prison, always subjected to the ruling magistrate the 11? A fine and imprisonment until I pay? That would be the same thing for me, for as I have no money. Exile? For perhaps you might accept that assessment. I should have to be inordinately fond of life, gentlemen of the jury, to be so unreasonable as to suppose that other men will easily tolerate my company and conversation when you, my fellow citizens, have been unable to endure them, but found them a burden and resented them so that you are now seeking to get rid of them. Far from it, gentlemen. It would be a fine life at my age to be driven out of one city after another, for I know very well that wherever I go, the young men will listen to my talk as they do here. If I drive them away, they will themselves persuade their elders to drive me out. If I do not drive them away, their fathers and relations will drive me out on their behalf. Perhaps some might say, "But Socrates, if you leave us, will you not be able to live quietly without talking?" Now this is the most difficult point on which to convince some of you. If I say that it is impossible for me to keep quiet because that means disobeying the gods, you will not believe me and will think that I am being ironical. On the other hand, if I say that it is the greatest good for a man to discuss virtue every day and those things about which you hear me conversing and testing myself and others, for the unexamined life is not worth living for man, you will believe me even less. What I say is true, gentlemen, but it is not easy to convince you. At the same time, I am not accustomed to think that I deserve any penalty. If I had money, I would assess the penalty at the amount I could pay, for that would not hurt me. But I have none, unless you are willing to set my penalty at the amount I can pay, and perhaps I could pay you one mina of silver. So that is my assessment. Plato here, gentlemen of the jury, and Crito and Critobulus and Apollodorus bid me put the penalty at 30 minae, and they will stand surety for the money. Well then, it is my assessment, and they will be sufficient guarantees of the payment. The jury now votes again and sentences Socrates to death. It is for the sake of a short time, gentlemen of the jury, that you will acquire the reputation and the guilt in the eyes of those who want to denigrate the city of having killed Socrates, a wise man. For they who want to revile you will say that I am wise even if I am not. If you had waited but a little while, this would have happened of its own accord. You see, at my age, that I am already advanced in years and close to death. I am saying this not to all of you, but to those of you who condemn me to death. And to these jurors I say, perhaps you think that I was convicted for lack of such words as I might have convinced you. I thought I should say or do all I could to avoid my sentence. Far from it. I was convicted because I lacked not the words, but the boldness and shamelessness and the willingness to say to you what you would most gladly have heard from me. Lamentations and tears and my saying and doing many things that I say are unworthy of me, but that you are accustomed to hear from others. I did not think then that the danger I ran should make me do anything mean, nor do I now regret the nature of my defense. I would much rather die after this kind of defense than live after making the other kind. Neither I nor any other man should, on trial or in war, contrive to avoid death at any cost. Indeed, it is often obvious in battle that one could escape death by throwing away one's weapons and by turning to supplicate one's pursuers. And there are many ways to avoid death in every kind of danger if one will venture to do or say anything to avoid it. It is not difficult to avoid death, gentlemen of the jury. It is much more difficult to avoid wickedness, for it runs faster than death. Slow and elderly as I am, I have been caught by the slower pursuer, whereas my accusers, being clever and sharp, have been caught by the quicker. Wickedness. I leave you now, condemned to death by you, but they are condemned by truth to wickedness and injustice. So I maintain my assessment, and they maintain theirs. This perhaps had to happen, and I think it is as it should be. Now I want to prophesy those who convicted me, for I am at the point when men prophesy most when they are about to die. I say, gentlemen, to those who voted to kill me, that vengeance will come upon you immediately after my death, a vengeance much harder to bear than that which you took in killing me. You did this in the belief that you would avoid giving an account of your life, but I maintain that quite the opposite will happen to you. There will be more people to test you, whom I now held back, but you did not notice it. They will be more difficult to deal with as they will be younger and you will resent them more. You are wrong if you believe that by killing people you will prevent anyone from reproaching you for not living the right way. To escape such tests is neither possible nor good, but it is the best and easiest not to discredit others, but to prepare oneself to be as good as possible. With this prophecy to you who convicted me, I part from you. I should be glad to discuss what has happened with those who voted for my acquittal during the time that the officers of the court are busy, and I do not yet have to depart to my death. So, gentlemen of the jury, stay with me a while, for nothing prevents us from talking to each other while it is allowed. To you, as being my friends, I want to show the meaning of what has occurred. A surprising thing has happened to me, judges. You I would rightly call judges. At all previous times, my familiar prophetic power, my spiritual manifestation frequently opposed me, even in small matters, when I was about to do something wrong. But now that, as you can see for yourselves, I was faced with what one might think, and what and what is generally thought to be the worst of evils, my divine sign has not opposed me, either when I left home at dawn, or when I came to court, or at any time when I was about to say something during my speech. Yet in other talks it often held me back in the middle of my speaking, but now it has opposed no word or deed of mine. What do I think is the reason for this? I will tell you. What has happened to me may well be a good thing, and those of us who believe death to be an evil are certainly mistaken. I have convincing proof of this, for it is impossible that my familiar sign did not impose me if I was not about to do what was right. Let us reflect in this way that there is good hope that death is a blessing, for it is one of two things. Either the dead are nothing and have no perception of anything, or it is, as we are told, a change in relocating for the soul from here to another place. If it is complete lack of perception, like a dreamless sleep, then death would be a great advantage. For I think that if one had to pick out that night during which a man slept soundly and did not dream, put beside other nights and days of his life, and then see how many days and nights had been better and more pleasant than that night, not only a private person, but the great king would find them easy to count compared with the other days and nights. If death is like this, then I say it is an advantage, for all eternity would then seem to be no more than a single night. If, on the other hand, death is a change from here to another place, what are we told is true, and all have died are there, what greater blessing could be there, gentlemen of the jury? If anyone arriving in Hades will have escaped from those who call themselves judges here, and will find true judges who are said to sit in judgment there, Minos and Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus and Triptolemus, and the other demigods who have been upright in their own life, would that be a poor kind of change? Again, what would one of you give to keep company with Orpheus and Mausolus, Hesiod and Homer? I am willing to die many times if that is true. It would remain a wonderful way for me to spend my time whenever I met Palamedes and Ajax, the son of Telamon, and any other of the great men who of old who died through unjust conviction, to compare my experience with theirs. I think it would be pleasant. Most important, I could spend my time testing and examining people there, as I do here, as who among them is wise and who thinks he is but is not. What would one not give, gentlemen of the jury, for the opportunity to examine the man who led who led the great expedition against Troy, or Odysseus, or Sisyphus, and innumerable other men and women one could mention? It would be an extraordinary happiness to talk with them, to keep company with them, and examine them. In any case, they would certainly not put one death for doing. They would not put one to death for doing so. They are happier than we are in other respects, and for the rest of time they are deathless, if indeed what we are told is true. You must be of good hope in regards death. You too must be of good hope as regards death, gentlemen of the jury, and keep this one truth in mind, that a good man cannot be harmed either in life or in death, and that his affairs are not neglected by the gods. What has happened to me now has not happened of itself, but it is clear to me that it was better for me to die now and to escape from trouble. That is why my divine sign did not oppose me at any point. So I am certainly not angry with those of you who convicted me, or with my accusers. Of course, that was not their purpose when they accused and convicted me, but they thought they were hurting me, and for this they deserve blame. This much I ask from them: when my sons grow up, avenge yourselves by causing them the same kind of grief that I caused you, if you think they care for money or anything else more than they care for virtue, or if you think they are somebody when they are nobody. Reproach them as I reproach you, that they do not care for the right things and think that they are worthy when they are not worthy of anything. If you do this, I shall have been justly treated by you, and my sons also. Now the hour to part has come. I go to die, you go to live. Which of us goes to the better lot is known to no one except the god. And that is Apology. Oh, there's some questions here at the bottom. Interesting. We'll get to those in a second. So, any thoughts?
So, from what I understand, which is honestly difficult pay attention time. I understand he was convicted of quote unquote corrupting the youth, which is trying to teach them his way of philosophy, or
pretty much, yeah. So he's Socrates is known as the Gadfly, which is from here. This is a very famous text, Apology. Another thing that you probably caught was the unexamined life is not one worth living. That's also where that came from. But basically, I don't know if you were here for Euthyphro or not, but that's actually probably really good that we ended up reading Euthyphro before this, because it shows kind of exactly the relationship that Socrates had with Athens in general, where Euthyphro and Socrates were on their way to court, and Euthyphro was quite convinced in their convictions. They believed that they knew what was pious and what was impious, and that they were doing the right thing. And Socrates kept questioning them and prodding them and poking at their beliefs and being like, well, clearly you know more about this than me, so please teach me. And then he would make this and that claim, and Socrates would just gradually, continuously undermine it. I would recommend going back and checking out the Euthyphro video. It's only about an hour long. But that's kind of the trend of most of his dialogues and how people in Athens generally viewed him as kind of an annoyance. By the end of it, Euthyphro had not given Socrates an adequate answer as to what is pious and impious, because Euthyphro basically said that which is pious is that which the god loves, and could not answer. Like, at that point, Socrates was pointing out, is it pious because the god loves it, or do the gods love it because it is pious? And he said that the gods love it because it is pious. It is not pious because the gods love it. To which Socrates says, then you still haven't answered my question of what is the thing that makes things pious or impious. And by the end of it, he was just like, gotta peace out, bro, talk to you later. So, that's the general trend of Socrates. He was a major pain for many public figures because of his rhetorical skill, being able to sort of stir up contradictions amongst people's firm beliefs. That's where we get like terms like the Socratic Method from, where a professor will have their kids talk about stuff, and the professor will question them about that and try and move them forward along a thought process rather than just lecturing at them. The official charges were corrupting the youth, not believing in the gods of the city, but instead spirits, and convincing the youth to do the same, to speak of things in the sky and below the earth, and to make the weaker argument the stronger, and to go about claiming that he is wise. And as we saw, he sort of went through all of those and pointed out, he doesn't claim to be wise any more than he knows that he knows nothing, and most people don't know that they know nothing, or close to nothing. So that's basically a single important truth that he knows that many others do not. The whole in the skies and below the grounds and makes the weaker argument the stronger are just blank generic criticisms that he pointed out, like, find me someone who has heard me talk about these things actually, and they couldn't bring anyone against him. As far as corrupting the youth, he insisted that he either did not corrupt the youth or did not do so willingly. As far as the charge of atheism, he pointed out that he cannot be an atheist if he believes in the children of the gods. It's impossible to believe in the children of the gods if you don't believe in the gods. But at the end of it, they ended up convicting him as guilty by, as you saw, a relatively close margin. If it was 30 votes the other way, then he would have been acquitted. Interesting to note, though, what was generally expected, and I'm not a historian, I'm just reciting what's been told of me of this. What was generally expected in this situation, when someone of a serious thing like this is found guilty. What they were expecting Socrates to ask for, and what they wanted him to ask for, was exile. They wanted him to request the punishment of exile, and they would have let him, gather all his things and leave and live a peaceful life outside of Athens. And as you saw, he thought that exile from Athens and not being able to continue with philosophy was a worse fate than death, because death could be good or bad, whereas he knew that would simply be bad. And because he is still convinced that he did not do anything wrong, he doesn't see why he should suggest a punishment unfitting of his quote-unquote crimes, which is why he said, what should my punishment be for the wrongdoings I have done? Free food for the rest of my life.
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so he said to be exiled is a fate far worse than death. I'm not too familiar, so I just want to ask: can he do philosophy somewhere else, or it's like is
he
that
covered that? He covered that. He said that if he were to go the other places, he doesn't see why places elsewhere would be more tolerant than Athens, his hometown, his fellow citizens, and kindred. If he were to go to somewhere else and practice philosophy, then people would kick him out because they don't like him doing philosophy. If he were to go somewhere else and not practice philosophy, then people would go to him, pester him to do philosophy, he would refuse, and they would still kick him out.
Okay, I can't miss that point. All right.
Again, I think this is the case. Not a historian, but from what I've heard, I can actually Google it real quick. But my understanding is that the margin between those that here, let me just Google it real quick. Socrates trial vote count. Fitting juries were drawn by lottery. In Apology of Socrates, about Socrates' defense, Plato said if just 30 of the votes had been otherwise, then Socrates would have been acquitted, and that perhaps less than 3/5 of the jury voted against him. Assuming that a jury of 501, this would imply that he was convicted by a majority of 280 against 221. Having been found guilty of corruption and impiety, yada yada. Fine of drachmas. Death penalty. Passed by the greater. Okay, here it is. In the end, the sentence of death was passed by a greater majority of the jury than by which he had been convicted. So that was always a very curious historical thing. I think this is true, although I'm noting that it is not directly cited here. Presumably it's from some citation down here. But yeah, if I've heard that multiple times in the past from people that probably did more thoroughly research it. I'm inclined to believe it's true. Just an interesting thing.
Alright.
Yeah, a lot of the argumentation stuff is in the first half of Apology rather than the second. Was there anything about the whole questioning of the goodness and badness of death you wanted to talk about?
Not really. I mean, not that I can think of at the moment. Because he is right that we really don't know if death is a good thing or a bad thing. Or if it's a big relief, so...
What is the jury's verdict, and what do the accusers recommend as a proper penalty? What counter penalty does Socrates propose himself? Yeah, these are really, really basic questions. They're not that helpful. Alright, well, it's been a little under an hour, a bit shorter than the others. But, you know, we don't have that many people with us tonight, and Apology is pretty straightforward, not super philosophically dense, although it is a fairly entertaining text. So I'm just going to go ahead and call that for today's reading. And then I guess tomorrow we will be moving on with... Let me grab my book real quick. Either Crito, Meno, or Phaedo. We will figure that out soon. Alright, see you tomorrow.
See ya.